Hi guys, I hope y'all are having a great week. I hope you enjoyed your week off. Congratulations to my nephews and niece who all won the state tournament here in Frisco. Very excited about that. Alright, so for your government test this week, I had it slated for yesterday, but then I gave a grace till today because I realized that I'm going to be going over stuff on the video. And it's just good. If you guys are like me, I like to review. Okay? So I have it in my hands as we're reviewing. Does that make you feel good? Alright. So before we do it, I just kind of want to go over the information that we have. And just remember, don't let your little limbic system go up. You know this. Say to yourself, I know this. Okay, you do. All right. When I ask what are the 3 branches of government, you know this. So it's executive, legislative, judicial. These are the 3 branches of government. Executive is who? The president. Judicial is Supreme Court, and legislative is the House and the Senate. It's Congress, but the Congress is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate, okay? I hope you guys know that by now, but I'm going to keep reviewing it every time because it kind of builds on itself, and if you don't understand the basics, once you build the skeleton of what you're going to know about government, then you can kind of fill in, you know, names and places and things we're going to be learning about the buildings and all that kind of stuff. You can fill it in once you have the basics, okay? So what are they again? Executive, judicial, and legislative. So when I say to you, which branch of government does the president work for? You're going to say executive. Good. When I say what branch of government is the Supreme Court, you're going to say judicial. Good. And when I say which branch of government is Congress, you're going to say or put, right, I mean legislative, but you know what I meant. You're going to put Congress, House of Representatives, Senate, okay? Those are the, that's the legislative branch, okay? So I want you to know the 3 branches of government. You know, it's very important. So just whatever tricks you have to think of in your mind to learn that, make sure you know it, okay? All right, for the executive branch, who works under the executive, who of course is the president. Next in line is the vice president. But the president really runs the White House. The vice president's kind of on the side. He does different duties. First lady does different duties. First ladies a lot of times will have agendas, and secretaries and people that work for her. Like, you know, one first lady, she had the war on drugs. And another first lady, Betty Ford, she started like the Betty Ford clinics and all that for people that were dependent on alcohol or drugs or whatever. We've had like different first ladies with different agendas. I know those are both kind of the same thing, but they're the ones I can think of right now. So every first lady a lot of times has agendas that she wants to do too, and we haven't talked about the first ladies yet, but we will. All right? So the president for the executive branch has his cabinet. Cabinet are made out of, you know, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Labor, Secretary of Agriculture, and this cabinet, they go out and they represent the president, and they kind of handle everything. Think of them as like CEOs of corporations. They handle everything, but they bring the big decisions to the president, and they'll confer with the president about things if something's going on. So they're kind of, you know, one person can't do it all. So they come and say, oh, President, I need to meet with you. We got this situation going on or that situation, okay? So that's the cabinet. And then the judicial branch is just made up of the Supreme Court, and they're all judges, but there's a Chief Justice, the guy in the middle with the gavel. And how many justices are there? 9. Good. 9 justices. And the Chief Justice's name is John Roberts. Good. There's 2 other conservative justices we've talked about so far. One is Clarence Thomas. He's a black conservative, which is unusual in itself. There's a lot of black conservatives, but they're not that vocal because they really get, they just get squashed and crushed in the press. But anyway, he's a black conservative. He rules consistently conservative. And then you have Antonin Scalia. And Antonin Scalia is a conservative also that we've just learned. And then we also know Chief Justice Roberts. That was one of the first guys we learned. So they're on the Supreme Court. So we have, who do we have again? We have Justice John Roberts. And he's the, you know, he's the guy who kind of rules over the Supreme Court. Chief Justice John Roberts. We have Clarence Thomas. And we have Antonin Scalia. All right? Important you know those guys. All right. In the president's cabinet, we've only learned a couple of people. We know the president is Barack Obama. And we know the vice president is Joe Biden, of course. Joe Biden is also the president of what? The Senate. Good. President of the Senate. So he's usually kind of president in name only. He only goes over to the Senate when there's a tie. Okay? So there's a tie. He'll go over and he'll cast the deciding ballot. Otherwise, Harry Reid's in charge, which is the majority leader. So he's kind of the guy that rules from day to day. And that's what the Democratic Party is now in charge of the Senate. Okay? So we have, like I said, so in the cabinet, we've learned a couple of people under the executive branch in the cabinet. We learned Hillary Clinton. So her name is perfectly acceptable, Secretary of State. There's a new guy that's Secretary of State. So if you want to put who's Secretary of State now, you may. We've also learned Eric Holder, Attorney General. Eric Holder. He's the guy that looks like Stedman. Okay? So if you want to put Kerry is the new Secretary of State, you can. But Hillary Clinton's just fine too. And then Attorney General, Eric Holder. I almost said Secretary of Defense, but no, that's not him. All right, Eric Holder, Attorney General. He's like, think of him as the policeman's policeman. He's the top dog. He's over who we prosecute and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So the president, we already just went over that, but just to review, the president has the executive branch. The Harry Reid is in charge, or he's the majority leader of the Senate, and that's under the judicial branch. So under the legislative branch. Can I get this right? Here's Harry Reid over here, the majority leader. That's the only one we've learned in the Senate. And then, of course, we've learned that there's a president pro tem, but you don't have to know his name. And then in the House of Representatives, we've learned the Speaker of the House, who is John Boehner. And then we've also learned the minority leader, which is Nancy Pelosi. So as a bonus, if you want to know, the majority leader, or if you want to know, who else do we have in there? I guess that's it, because we haven't learned the whips yet, because there's a majority whip and a minority whip, and they whip up the votes. So as a bonus, I'd look that up before your test if you want. So, because you don't have to know them, but if you know them, it will be a bonus. All right. Let's see. What branch of government is made up of two houses? That should be easy since we just went over it. And that's the legislative branch, because you have two houses of Congress. Together, they're called Congress. A lot of times people call the House of Representatives Congress. They'll say the Congress and the Senate. And you'll hear that on shows a lot if you watch Fox, whatever, the Congress. But it's really the House of Representatives and the Senate. There's two houses of Congress. All right, House of Representatives, Senate. Which body of government makes the laws? Which body do you think makes the laws? And that would be the legislative body. The legislative body make the laws. The executive branch is supposed to enforce the laws. And the judicial branch, it's really not supposed to judge the laws, but now that's kind of what it does. And it's called judicial review. We learned about the case that started judicial review. And they kind of judge the laws. But they really were, when you go up through the courts and you appeal, and then when you've gone through every court and every appeal you possibly can, maybe you're sentenced to death row or you're fighting for somebody's sentence, then the Supreme Court will say, okay, we'll hear your case, and then they'll rule on it. Okay, so it wasn't really made to rule whether these laws were constitutional, but sometimes that is what it's become. But it's supposed to rule whether judges in previous cases in courts have made the correct ruling according to the Constitution. Their whole basis is supposed to be, is this a part of the Constitution? Or does this consist with the Constitution? All right, I got 9 minutes, so one more minute. I'm going to stop and do part 2 to this video just so you guys know, okay? What are the names of the two houses of Congress? We know that's House of Representatives and the Senate. Good. Which house is made up of two people from every state? And that would be what? The Senate. All right, Senate's made up of two people from every state. There's always 100 people in the Senate. The House of Representatives is made up according to population. So Texas is going to have way more votes than Rhode Island in the House of Representatives. Last one before I do part 2. Who is Clarence Thomas? Well, we just went over him. Clarence Thomas is in the judicial branch. He's a black conservative. He's awesome. Because remember I told you he's Rush's bestie and I love Rush. So he's in the judicial branch, Clarence Thomas. All right, I'm going to do part 2 so we can go over this and you'll be ready for your test. Have a great day.